It was supposed to be a quiet hike, but it would turn out to be one of the scariest days of Avery's life. And it all started when she stumbled upon a strange, human-like face in one of the trees. And it would end with the poor woman calling 911, fearing for her life. This was not supposed to happen today. Not ever. But Avery had accidentally got herself involved in something she had no way out of. After Avery's 911 call, police from multiple different counties started flooding into the forest. Avery knew that she was witnessing something very strange, but she did not know that the police were going to take this seriously. She quickly met up with the officer, and they guided her to a car that took her back to the station. Here, Avery had to wait a long time for an explanation as she saw hooded figure after hooded figure being brought into the station and getting locked up in the now overflowing cell. She knew that these people came from the forest, but why were the police arresting them? Then an officer took her apart and told her everything. Avery could not believe it, but where did these faces come from? Why were the police out in such force, and who were these hooded figures? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Avery had been completely stopped in her tracks when she passed this very strange-looking tree. She had never seen anything like this before in all her years of hiking in the forest. And what made it even stranger was that she had been traversing a path that she had walked dozens of times before. How had she not noticed this before? Avery did not even really know what she was looking at. When she got closer, she determined that it looked like some sort of face. But as Avery was trying to inspect the face in the tree a little more closely, she was suddenly startled by a sound, a voice even. "Why are you here?" Avery thought for a second that it was the face in the tree talking to her. But when she looked past the tree, she was startled upon seeing 3 hooded individuals with their faces covered. "You cannot be here! She knows too much! Get her!" Avery was frozen in fear and shocked by what these figures were saying to her. Avery jumped up and started to run away as fast as she could. The hooded figures chasing her clearly did not, as she was quickly leaving them in their dust until they had completely disappeared from sight. She settled on a rather large and strong tree. She could easily climb this and hide between the leaves completely out of sight. But right before she was about to climb up, she saw the base of the tree and immediately noticed it. There was a very similar face carved into the tree here. She needed to get out of sight quickly and started stealthily climbing up. And she was right on time, as when she had gotten high enough up there, she could see the hooded figures approaching again. Avery hoped that they would just pass her tree and continue moving, but of course they stopped right below her. They did not speak at first. They all faced the tree and then kneeled down in front of it. Avery could not quite hear what they were saying, but it sounded like they were praying. The hooded figures had no intention of leaving. In fact, Avery could hear one of them make a call, and he was telling the person he spoke to that they needed to come here quickly. And to Avery's horror, it did not take long for a lot more hooded figures to arrive. She counted at least 10 that arrived in a group, all wearing the same hoods, except for one. There was one figure who stood out from the rest. He was walking in between all the other hooded figures, and when they arrived at the tree, he immediately took the center while all the other hooded figures surrounded him. He put both his hands on the tree and spoke some words in a language that Avery could not understand. Avery's heart pounded in her chest as she leaped from branch to branch, the dense forest canopy aiding her escape from the mysterious hooded figures below. In the heart of the forest, Avery found a hollowed-out tree, its dark interior offering a temporary refuge. She squeezed into the cramped space, her breaths shallow and silent. As Avery shifted her position within the tree, a brittle branch gave way under her, sending her tumbling to the ground with a stifled gasp. Perched high in the foliage, Avery's eyes were fixed on a clearing where the hooded figures gathered, their movements synchronized in a chilling, ritualistic dance. From her hidden vantage point, she watched, the sense of dread growing as their chants filled the air, the scene unfolding below both mesmerizing and terrifying in its strange solemnity. A sudden rustle alerted Avery to a hooded figure mere steps away from her hiding spot, his searching gaze sweeping the forest. Heart in her throat, Avery retreated further into the underbrush, each careful step a silent prayer to remain unseen. Peering through the undergrowth, she witnessed a group of hooded figures gathered in a circle, their voices rising and falling in an eerie, hypnotic rhythm that suggested the onset of some unnerving ritual. The path, barely visible under the thick underbrush, hinted at previous human presence, a forgotten route that might hold secrets to the forest's mysteries, or perhaps a way out of this nightmare. In a moment of desperation, Avery frantically gathered dry leaves and sticks, striking her last match to ignite a makeshift torch. The small, flickering flame seemed like a beacon of hope, its light piercing the dense canopy above, a desperate signal for rescue in the engulfing darkness of the forest. However, the glowing torch did more than cut through the darkness. It caught the attention of a solitary hooded figure. Avery's heart sank as she glimpsed the figure approaching, the fire's light reflecting in his watchful eyes. With no time to lose, she doused the flame and darted away, her signal of hope turning into a trigger for a perilous chase. As Avery fled, she saw the tree where her torch had briefly rested suddenly burst into flames, the fire climbing rapidly up the trunk. But in a turn as mysterious as the forest itself, the flames flickered and died out as quickly as they had appeared, leaving the tree unscathed and Avery bewildered by this inexplicable phenomenon. The sudden extinguishing of the fire drew the attention of the hooded figures, who converged around the tree. To Avery's astonishment, they began a strange, jubilant chant, their voices blending into a celebratory chorus that resonated through the forest as if the mystical quenching of the fire was a part of their strange and creepy ritual. Hidden in the shadows, Avery watched as the figures encircled the tree, their movements synchronized in a ritualistic dance. Their chants grew louder, echoing eerily through the woods, as they performed what appeared to be a ceremony of reverence around the unscathed tree. The scene was as confounding as it was terrifying, deepening the mystery of the night. Realizing the need to keep track of her wandering, Avery began marking her path, breaking branches and scratching marks into the tree trunks. Driven by a mix of fear and determination to uncover the truth, Avery made a bold decision to circle back toward the ritual site. This risky move was driven by her need for answers, to understand the connection between the hooded figures, the ritual, and the mysterious faces carved into the trees. In a clearing near the ritual site, Avery stumbled upon a circle of stones, each bearing similar cryptic markings to those on the trees. The arrangement of the stones seemed deliberate, forming a pattern that was both arcane and intimidating. In the shadowed underbrush, Avery encountered a local, a reclusive man who had been covertly observing the cult's activities. The local, speaking in a cautious whisper, shared fragmented tales and warnings about the cult. He spoke of their sudden appearance in the forest, strange nocturnal rituals, and an unsettling reverence for the carved faces. Recognizing Avery's peril, the local offered her guidance to a safer path. He described landmarks and signs that she should follow, a pathway that snaked through less treacherous parts of the forest, leading closer to the edge of the woods and safety. His eyes, though fearful, seemed sincere, but Avery knew the danger of misplaced trust. In this forest of shadows and secrets, every decision bore weight. With trembling hands, Avery dialed 911, her voice cracking as she recounted the night's harrowing events. The disbelief was palpable, creating a frustrating barrier as Avery struggled to convey the danger she faced. After her frantic call, Avery waited, her heart pounding in her chest, hidden in the underbrush. The forest seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the response of the police, as Avery hoped her call had been enough to spur them into action. The stillness of the forest was shattered by the sound of police sirens and shouting officers. Teams of law enforcement, guided by Avery's detailed information, swarmed the woods, their flashlights piercing through the darkness. They moved with urgency, determined to locate and apprehend the enigmatic hooded figures Avery had described. From her concealed position, Avery watched with wide eyes as one by one, the hooded figures were caught by the police. The forest, which had been a labyrinth of danger, now echoed with the sounds of closure. Avery's ordeal was over, the chase through the woods reaching its conclusion with the restoration of peace and safety. After the forest was secured, Avery was escorted to the police station, her mind still reeling from the night's events. In the stark, fluorescent-lit room, she sat down to give her statement, her voice steady but her hands betraying a slight tremor. She began to unravel her tale, each word a piece of the puzzle she had lived. Avery found herself in a state of anxious waiting, hoping for a full explanation of the events she had witnessed. The station buzzed with activity, officers and detectives moving with purpose, yet the answers she sought seemed just out of reach. When it was her turn to speak, Avery recounted her experience with meticulous detail, her memory sharp despite the chaos she had endured. She described every encounter, every symbol, and the behavior of the cultists, her narrative painting a vivid picture for the officers. A significant revelation came when the detectives explained the origin of the carved faces in the trees. They were the work of the cult leader, intricately crafted to serve a purpose that was deeply rooted in the cult's beliefs. The detectives provided Avery with details about the cult leader, a charismatic yet enigmatic figure who had masterminded the group's activities. His background was a patchwork of half-truths and manipulations, painting a picture of a person who had skillfully drawn followers into his fold, using a blend of charisma and mystique to maintain his influence. Avery was further informed about the connections between the cult and a series of recent unsolved local crimes. The detectives had begun to piece together a pattern linking the cult's rituals and symbols to these incidents. What had seemed like unrelated criminal activities now appeared to be part of the cult's broader, nefarious operations within the community. The news of the cult's activities and the subsequent arrests sent shockwaves through the local community. Residents, who had lived in blissful ignorance of the cult's presence, now faced the unsettling reality of their proximity to such sinister activities. Conversations were abuzz with disbelief and concern as the community grappled with the revelations. In the wake of the cult's exposure, Avery found herself an unintended center of attention. Her role in uncovering the cult's activities, though born out of survival, thrust her into a spotlight she had never sought. People hailed her bravery, yet she grappled with the newfound attention, preferring the quiet anonymity she once enjoyed. Avery's extraordinary encounter and her crucial part in the cult's unraveling became a media sensation. Reporters and journalists clamored for her story, eager to broadcast the details of her harrowing experience in the dramatic police raid. The forest, once a place of tranquility, now stood as the backdrop to a tale that captured widespread attention. In quieter moments, Avery reflected on the surreal journey she had embarked on. What began as a simple hike had morphed into an ordeal that altered the fabric of her life. She pondered her unexpected role in the cult's exposure, her actions driven by instinct and courage. It was a role she had never envisioned for herself, yet one that had changed her indelibly. Despite her discomfort with the label, Avery was celebrated as a hero. The community, law enforcement, and even strangers expressed their admiration for her bravery. She found herself reluctantly accepting their accolades, struggling with the heroism thrust upon her. In her heart, she knew her actions were driven not by a desire for heroism, but by a will to survive and uncover the truth.